Hello, everyone. Dr. Victoria Scarbo here, speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center in Wareham, Massachusetts. We're going to look at the last week of June 2023. That is June 25th to June 30th. Actually, 6 days, the last 6 days of June, to wrap up the Astrology Kabbalah of June 2023. So let's get started with that. All right, so we are starting with Sunday, June 25th. We have Mercury making a first quarter square to Neptune at 28 degrees of Gemini Pisces. Mercury, well, now last week we just had the square between the Sun and Neptune, and this week we have Mercury square Neptune. And as with the Sun and Neptune, Mercury and Neptune, there's always some confusion. There can be some challenges here because both the Sun and Mercury have the energy of demarcating, delineating things, right? Seeing things. In the case of Mercury, categorizing things. And then when you add Neptune to the picture, there's a lot of imagination, and that imagination can be for the good. You can imagine the best things and sort of work from that sort of higher vibrational state of Neptune, or you can be a big fat liar with this combination. In fact, Mercury square Neptune is the only aspect that Donald Trump has to his Mercury. It's not always seen as an aspect that brings out the truth. So we have here stretching the truth, whether done consciously or not, or a bit of both, is associated with this position. So we can't trust everything we hear. On Sunday here, is it Sunday or Monday? Yeah, Sunday. So just you need to be open but circumspect. On Monday the 26th, we have the first quarter moon at 5 degrees of Libra, the Sun at 5 degrees of Cancer. This is the first quarter moon of the lunation cycle. That began with the new moon on that occurred last Sunday, the 18th. And that was a new moon in the sign of 27 degrees, I believe, of Gemini, and it was square Neptune. So this is the crisis in action that needs to be taken. We also have on Monday Mars making a first quarter square to Uranus. This is probably the most disruptive and perhaps the most important aspect that's happening this week. It's occurring at 22 degrees of Leo, Taurus, Mars in Leo and Uranus in Taurus. We also have Mercury ingressing into Cancer that day on the 26th, and then Mercury immediately making an inconjunct to Pluto. Is that true? It is true, except Mercury makes an inconjunct to Pluto and then moves into Cancer. That's what happens. All right. So now Mercury is out of Gemini. It wasn't there very long, but during the time that Mercury was in Gemini, we got a lot of information. So this is true. The only difference is Mercury inconjuncts Pluto first, because Pluto is now in Capricorn. Remember, it moved back into Capricorn on the 11th. And so when Mercury is at the last degree of Gemini, it inconjuncts Pluto, and then it moves into Cancer. On the 28th, which is a Wednesday, we have the Sun making a waxing trine to Saturn. This is a trine of creative self-expression. Saturn always brings a certain amount of stability and flow. There's flow here with the Sun and Saturn and Pisces. On the 30th of June, that's a Friday, we have Mercury making a waxing trine to Saturn. So we can see that the Sun and Mercury are sort of moving together. The Sun makes the aspect first with whatever it's making an aspect with, and then Mercury does. And that also happens with the square to Neptune, right? And then we have Neptune stationing retrograde at 28 degrees of Pisces. Says a fertile garden under the full moon reveals a variety of full-grown vegetables. The keynote, the full satisfaction of the individual's basic needs. And the key word here is abundance, abundance. So let's look at some of the charts to get a little bit more specific about what's happening. Okay, here we go. So here's Mercury making that first quarter square to Neptune. It is a crisis in action on seeds planted at the Mercury-Neptune conjunction, which happened in Pisces, of course, because Neptune has been in Pisces since 2011. And that happened on March 16th, and it happened at 26 degrees of Pisces. The symbol at that time, so this is the seed thought or the seed planted at that time, watching a very thin crescent moon appearing at sunset. Different people realize that the time has come to go ahead with their different projects. The keynote here is the keen appreciation of the value of individualized responses in any challenge to life. And the key word here is the fallacy of totalitarianism. So this is showing us this conjunction of Neptune and Mercury was asking us to consider that there's not just one way to do things, and everybody has, their own talents and abilities, and it's time for them to utilize those talents and abilities. And now we come to this crisis point within this cycle. And Neptune is now at 28 degrees of Pisces. And it says a fertile garden under a full moon reveals a variety of full-grown vegetables. Interesting that we have two moon. We have the crescent moon as the initial symbol, and now we have the full moon. So that's sort of the beginning, and this is the fruition of a cycle here. The full satisfaction of the individual's basic needs, but it is square. This symbol is square Mercury at 28 degrees of Gemini. Through bankruptcy, society gives an overburdened individual an opportunity to begin again. The release from unbearable pressures, feeling freeing one for new tasks. So this is both a symbol of success and perhaps abundance, along with a chance to start again. No matter how burdened we are, there's always the possibility of starting again. And we can see this is the square right here. And we can see that it's actually part of a T-square with the moon here in Virgo. The opposite side here, where the T-square is open, is Sagittarius. 27 degrees of Sag, close enough, I guess, to the galactic center. So in the great central sun. So we have this tense but mutable T-square, which requires us to think about how we can maybe free ourselves from some of the situations we find ourselves in here. This is a lot of mental strain here, a lot of mental strain in this aspect. All right, now this is the one that I think is probably most important for this week, and it's the square between Mars and Uranus, because it is the most explosive, and it can be it is a call to action. It's a call to action. All squares are a call to for something to change, actually a call for change. In the case of first quarter squares, it's a call to action, and in the case of last quarter squares, it's a call to think in a different way. And so this is about taking an action. Now, this is a crisis in action on seeds planted at the Mars-Uranus conjunction, which occurred way back on August 1st of 2022. That vibration of that day was the 15-6, which is the double card. It says this occurred at 19 degrees of Taurus, and a lot of stuff happened at 19 degrees of Taurus around that time, because this was the Sabian symbol that kept coming up in 2022, and it's a new continent rising out of the ocean, the surge of new potentiality after the crisis. Allow the infinite potential to operate in unconstrained spontaneity. This means to have reached a state in which conscious rational ego is no longer a controlling factor. So to a certain extent, there's a spontaneous eruption or a spontaneous manifestation of something that's totally out of our control, right? So now we come to the first quarter square of this. Uranus is at 22 degrees of Taurus, a white dove flying over troubled waters, a spiritual inspiration that comes to the individual in overcoming a crisis. And the key word here is reward to the faithful. Now, this is square Mars, which is at 22 degrees of Leo, which says a carrier pigeon fulfilling its mission. Spirituality in terms of training for service to mankind, keyword world server. So as world servers, folks, you're being asked to take an action. And this is about us all doing our part to quell the waters, to bring the healing, to move on our mission. And what's our mission? Our mission is about this new continent rising out of the ocean, this new way of being, this new relationship we have with the earth beneath our feet. We might even say Uranus in Taurus, right? So this is about taking action on what is needed in this new paradigm. We are not living in the same paradigm as we had before. This is a new paradigm, and we have to come to terms with that and then work as effectively as we can. And one of the ways to do that is to be your best, honestly, not to borrow from Melania or anything, but be your best really is an important idea here. We have the Saturn waxing trine to the sun, and it actually creates a kite formation. First, a water trine here with the sun, with the moon and Saturn and the sun. We also have there's actually two trines here. We have Mercury and the moon, perhaps this definitely the south node, and Saturn. Okay. And then as part of the kite, we have Jupiter here opposing the moon, sextiling Saturn, sextiling the sun. Jupiter in Taurus. This is expansion of Taurian things, right? So what's real? The earth beneath our feet, food, water, shelter. This is what is important. And this sun trine Saturn does help to bring all of this together. It is, to a certain extent, a stabilizing force, but one in which we're dealing with the two primary planets, the sun and the moon, right? And then the two social planets. So this is how are we going to structure and organize society so that the people within that society can survive and then ultimately thrive. That's the question here, right? That's what I see in this T-square. So we have creative self-expression of will. This began at the Sun-Saturn synod, which was on the 16th of February at 28 degrees of Aquarius. A tree felled and sawed to ensure a supply of wood for the winter. The knowledge and skill used in its natural surroundings for the satisfaction of vital basic needs. And this is what we're looking at. We have to figure out what are our basic needs: food, shelter, safety, right? All of that. Now we have the sun at 8 degrees of Cancer. A group of rabbits dressed in human clothes walk as if on parade. The tendency for all forms of life to imitate higher forms as a stimulus for growth. Trine, Saturn at 8 of Pisces, a girl blowing a bugle, a call to participation in the service of the race as an evolutionary crisis approaches. The girl with the bugle is reminding us that as the more, I guess, evolved creature, I mean, that's what we think. I'm not sure that's true, but that's what we think, that we need to, get our stuff together here and start working for the benefit of all. Honestly, that's what this all looks like to me. But I'm sure most things look like that to me. And then we have the stationing of Neptune. Now, when these transpersonal planets change direction, usually there can be some outer thing that happens. With Neptune's, it's often more subtle than that, but Neptune is also mass consciousness and tidal wave. So this is not something that we can say, oh, it's just Neptune, because things can happen when Neptune changes direction as well. And we see here at 28 degrees of Pisces, a fertile garden under a full moon reveals a variety of full-grown vegetables. The key word is abundance, and abundance fitted to individualized requirements and wants. So this is a good time to really ponder what is essential in your life. What is it that you really need, what you really need to have, and maybe what you really want. But I think we're in a place of what needs to be before we can get to a place of what we want beyond what we need. So these are the energies that are wrapping up June. Okay, so let me just come back here. Hi, I'm back. So it's been a very interesting month. Not quite as interesting perhaps in ways as May was, but June certainly was another brick in the wall, or not, or another brick taken out of the wall, perhaps. July is July is a big shifting month because we have the nodes changing in July, and full moons, new moons, and we'll talk about all that next month. So I hope you enjoyed this little wrap up of the month. Have yourself a great day. Have a good week, and I will see you again for the Astrology Kumbala of July, the Tarot Scopes for July, and every other little thing that's happening that I think I might have something worth sharing, I guess. All right, guys, have a wonderful month, rest of your month, and I'll see you next month. Take care, everyone. Namaste.